Hi, welcome to Real Estate Talk. I'm Quinn,
I'm Dominika.
and we have
I'm
superstar mortgage agent Dwayne here. Dwayne, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is Dwayne. I'm a mortgage agent. I'm a mortgage agent with the Roy team. I will give a little bit of background about myself just on how I do become a specialist, not just with mortgages, but any other aspect of finance. I went to Schuler School of Business, went there to be an accountant, decided not to, but I took the same tax course all CAs take, and I had my own tax business for 20 years. I do corporate tax, individual tax, very well versed. I went into financial planning for investment. I have my Canadian securities course, my personal financial planning course, my certified financial planning course. I also did my CFA, certified financial analyst, level 1 and 2, and then I got into mortgages. So a lot of stuff I do in regards to mortgages, it has to do with mortgages. It's also financial planning and other aspects of finance I bring in to help people make money through real estate.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Okay, so we brought Dwayne today to talk about something that we're seeing in the industry right now, which is affecting purchasers of new development. As everybody knows, you need to have your pre-approval to buy a new development unit at the point of purchase, but those units don't become final and delivered for sometimes many years in the future. And right now, people who have purchased maybe 4 or 5 years ago are facing a new challenge. And Dwayne, why don't you tell us what's happening with getting a mortgage on some of these units that are coming to the market right now?
Yeah, I will take away some of a lot of the misconceptions that are happening because the rates have gone up. There have been some hurdles as far as that goes. I do talk a lot. Once you have 20% down, we're always going to get a mortgage, and there's always a way to make sure these people close. Let's just throw it out there, even with the high rates, right? As far as the cash flow, it's a different thing. It comes to a budgeting rather than a financial planning area. Than a mortgage area, and we can go through that later. But the biggest issue a lot of people are facing that's coming up more and more is a unit is not appraising. So for example, you bought a unit, I don't know, 1,000 square feet. It's $1 million unit. It's 1,000 square feet, whatever, and it's appraising for 950, 900,000, right? So when you buy a pre-construction, you're basing it off future prices, and it's not hitting those prices right now. The biggest issue on that, I don't know what they're going to do because I know they have to make up the difference. It's the same if you buy a resale and it appraises lower, you have to make up the difference. On a pre-construction, you buy it low, you have to make up the difference. So I've never seen a whole building not do it yet. It is starting to come out, and it's going to be a huge obstacle for people that don't have access to cash or other properties to leverage off of in order to close their property.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this in the hot market, right? When people were kind of going a little bit overboard, overbidding on properties, and then the appraisal was coming in a little bit short. So kind of similar to that. But this in new construction, we sell these properties at prices, like you said, in advance of market, right? So we're expecting that the price point for some of these units will be much higher than it is today. And that's what you're paying for, that appreciation. However, if the market dips to that point that we're at now, those properties could potentially not appraise at the value as you were expecting.
100.
So you're saying that there is sorry, Quinn?
Dwayne, how much time do they have? Like from the moment that they know that the appraisal didn't meet the standards or the price, how much time do they have to turn around before they have to close to get that amount?
Yeah, well, most pre-cons give you 3 weeks to get a mortgage. So if you have 3 weeks to get a mortgage, like you only have three it's a quick time period between go and start, right?
Yeah.
I think they have a lot of time, a lot of runway if you're working with the right real estate agent that realizes that maybe you made a misstep and says, listen, like say for example, any real estate agent out there that's sold pre-con that's going to close next year, you should look into the value and see if it's going to happen to give a client a runway to prepare. You're right. A lot of things about planning and preparing, and unfortunately most clients don't understand the market, and they've been sold based off that this is going to happen, and then 3 weeks before they realize it's not. So a good idea, you're right, is go to clients and say, listen, like we may have a shortfall. Let's find a solution. Because there usually is a solution, right? It's not the best solution, but there are solutions. But when a developer gives you 3 weeks to close, your opportunity to come up with a solution or your ability really shrinks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Most of the time you end up paying a lot more than you should if you have had that time to look into the solution, months ahead, right? Or like the
Correct.
outcome of it. Now,
Correct.
do you think that this will become one of those things where the government will step in at a later time to, circumvent that? Because we have seen where, the developmental charges went above and beyond what everyone thought, right? And then the government was trying to step in to mitigate that. Is this something that's going to turn into a situation like that, you think?
That's a good question. I'm gonna be. I really don't know. I'm gonna take like obviously observe and see the first one that happens. There is one building right now. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it, but there's a building right now that's coming due that not one unit's appraising apparently. So it's going to be interesting on how they do it. I don't know how the government can come in. I don't know what they can say. They can say builders, you're going to lose money, or I don't know whose side they can take. But it's a big miscalculation by people that from way back in the day, right?
Okay.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
yeah, and the one thing I even say with pre-construction, I talked to another agent, I think it was like 6 months ago. They were selling one, and I said, listen, well, what's the unit going for per square foot? And I think they said like 1,500. I said, what's the area going for? And they said it was like 1,000. I'm like, well, this closes in 6 years. It has to go up by 12% a year just to make sure you can close your unit. Right.
Yeah.
And the biggest, again, not trying to take away from real estate agents, but they don't have the ability to be able to look at the numbers and crunch them down for clients. And therefore they think it's going to happen. But even without this market going down, a lot of buildings wouldn't have closed. The real estate's not supposed to go up by that much the whole time. Even if we just normalize and go to 4 or 5%, you're talking about most buildings not closing next year.
Oh, for sure. Even if you look at the last 10 years, it's an anomaly that we've been seeing double digits increase, right? But for the longest time, the increase in Toronto was like 5 to 8%. So even if you look at that and then you look at 12%, where are you going to make up that downfall, right? So it all comes down to down on the buyer's shoulders. Now, are you running into this situation? Are you seeing more throughout the city, more in the GTA, or are you, because I know you also do mortgages across Canada, right? Are you seeing it all across Canada that this is happening?
Yeah, I don't see. I haven't done much pre-con throughout Canada, but I have done houses and stuff. It's happening all over Southern Ontario.
Which is where we saw the biggest increase during the hike. Okay.
Yeah, so now we're seeing it now. But yeah, so it's a big issue that's coming across. But even from an investment standpoint, if I go on a little tangent, I do apologize. I never see the point of buying. As an investor, your point of investing is to make money and to make sure, like I tell people all the time, the difference between stocks, bonds, real estate, and if you go real estate, pre-sale, resale, pre-construction, resale, whatever you do, the whole point of anything you do with money is to try to make more of it. Right. And technically, I think the shift happened in 2018 where you're buying for future prices. It's not a good investment. There's not if you compare it to anything else out there, you're actually losing money. Right. If you break down the pre-con, the establishment, like when you look at real estate itself, you get money from 3 different avenues. The first avenue is cash flow, cash flow negative, cash flow positive. Then you get it from mortgage pay down. But the biggest way you make money in real estate is appreciation. Well, buying future prices, you don't have appreciation. You just took away the biggest way you make money in real estate. So it does come down to a lot of fundamentals, and people unfortunately don't understand the money or the number aspect, and they got into an investment that doesn't make sense.
I think it comes down to, a lot of people think of it this way: buying resale versus buying new development. It's like on paper, right? It's kind of like, you either buy it with cash in hand, like you go to a store and buy like a shirt with cash in hand, versus you put it on a credit card. On the credit card, you don't really feel it. You don't really see it, right? There's no money being exchanged. So at the end of the day, I think it's that security that, you're putting 20% down into something that you hope is going to appreciate over the course of time. But the reality is, you're right, that the builders have gotten very smart and strategic in how they price their units. And yeah, when you look at it on a new development these days, you can go across the street and get a resale at, like $1,100 a square foot to $1,300 a square foot if you're looking downtown, versus $1,600 a square foot when you're looking at new development, right? And just to make up that price gap and hope and pray that in 4 years it's gonna not change, right? And I think this is one thing, like, back, like you said, 2018, when it started happening, our prices were still on the uprise, right? No one could predict that we would be here today where prices are starting to level off and, it's becoming a buyer's market, because for so long we were in a seller's market, right? For so long, the sellers were dictating what's happening. So the developers, had that upper hand. They were selling out. No one really looked at the price and broke it down to price per square feet, because everyone was trying to jump on that wagon, right? So now we're just seeing the repercussion of all of that. That's like, I mean, and for 3 weeks, like if you only know for 3 weeks, you can't even turn around and do an assignment sale, because, at the end of the day, you need those weeks for lawyers to look into paperwork, for the developer to even accept that, right?
Yeah. Well, also to jump in again, I'm not a real estate expert, but I want to say, if it doesn't appraise, how are you going to assign it?
Yeah, you're still going
You'd
to be
have
at
to
a
find
loss.
a buyer who's a cash buyer for the full, or at least it's more liquid.
Yeah, but even a cash buyer, you're still going to take a huge loss, because what cash buyer is going to want to buy an overappreciated asset? It's just they're stuck in. And another thing, again, we look at price per square, and Quinn, you made a good point, like say 1,600 a square. If you include closing costs, HST, and development, now you're up to almost 1,700 a square foot.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So when we back up and we compare the two investments, where you're looking at a resale or a pre-con, like even if the market goes nowhere, people don't realize you make an 8% return on your investment just by mortgage pay down from someone paying your rent or paying you rent. 8% over 6 years is 48% return, or 50%. You lose all of that by buying a pre-con. Never mind, you don't get depreciation. It's actually, like, again, I'm not trying to be rude or put people down. It's actually like such a crazy investment scheme, where it's like, if anyone actually looked at it 4 years ago, you would never, if you broke the numbers down, no one would ever go pre-con again as an investor. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What are you telling your investors that are coming up with these issues?
On how to close? Well, if it's an investor, right? So if you're an investor, 9 times out of 10, you have other properties.
The leverage?
Right? So yeah, you just have to leverage those properties to close this one. Take a loss and keep going.
What happens with the end users?
Well, people, like the first time buyers and the people who are gonna live there, they gotta go to parents. They gotta go to family. They gotta find a way to scrape together some money.
Now, the numbers that you're seeing, are we talking astronomically, like 6 figures, or are we talking like, 50, 20,000? What are you seeing on average there?
Yeah, well, it all depends. I saw one at Young and Egg that's 280,000 less than what they bought it for.
That's significant.
280. Oh, wow.
It all depends on the size of the unit. Right.
Yeah.
So the bigger the size, so just throw it. If you're appraising for 200 less, and you have again, this one was a 1,400 square foot unit, that's 280 you got to make up, right? I do think, to be honest, what will have to happen is, if the whole building doesn't appraise, you'll probably have the developer come down a little bit, and they probably have to meet somewhere in the middle, because how's the developer not going to close the whole building? It's going to be no one wants to go to court and stuff. But it is going to be some problems in 2023.
I mean, unfortunately, these problems are happening, but it also creates that awareness, right? The awareness that people have overlooked over the past like 5, 10, 15 years, as we've seen the market go up, right? When we were in a really hot market, there were a lot of things that went under the radar, right? A lot of things that we saw the red flags, but because the market was so hot, we didn't really talk about it back then, right? We never realized it was going to come down. But those red flags have always been there for new developments, right? Like when you look at the new development projects and the closing costs, and then what happened in the last year or two with the closing costs being astronomically higher than prediction, I mean, the red flags were always there for new development that one day this, this bubble is going to burst, for the lack of a better word, right? I don't like to say that, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're seeing, the implications of the prices increasing at such a fast rate, right? It was never sustainable. And I think that it's really important that, that the public is made aware of this moving forward, that, you have to be very careful and in real estate and in your investment to know that if you're going to get a return, because at this rate, you're $280,000 in, but we're not even considering the maintenance fees and the cost to even carry that afterwards, right? That $280,000 is just for a piece of paper for title, but then what about the monthly cost and the budget that comes with it, right?
100. There's a lot in there. But yeah, you're right. Like in any investment environment, whatever investment you go into, mistakes are always covered up by a good market, right? Because you're still doing okay. But just to throw it out there once again, like if it's still a huge mistake even in a high market, because if you would have bought resale 5 years ago compared to pre-con, and you actually put the numbers together, it's night and day how much more you would have made as an investor and built wealth for yourself if you would have went resale. Crazy the difference. Like I'm talking about astronomical numbers that people haven't put together yet. Right? Even if it's your own home and you're an end user, as much as people say it, an end user is not an investment. It is an investment. The reason why you buy and not rent is because you want to invest in and build equity within yourself, right? So everyone has lost money in this. If everyone has lost money in the pre-con market that didn't really do their numbers well, because you compare it to actual real estate, because real estate went crazy too.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It's going to be an interesting development in 2023 to see how the market is going to get affected, but how the developers are going to adapt to this, right? Because we're still seeing things flying off the shelf with developers. I mean, not as much as it was at the beginning of the year, but I mean, developers are still selling. They're selling out their projects, right? I mean, you look at Foray. Foray is at what, $1,600 a square foot almost. And that's going to be in Midtown as well. So all of those things are going to come into play. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm interested in seeing how many you're going to get going in the next couple of months. Right?
Probably a lot. But as you said, people will always buy, and I'm not trying to be a jackass. Once again, if you talk to me about anything except finance and sports, I have no clue, and I'm going to listen to someone else. So people are buying based off other people's knowledge or lack thereof, and it's the blind leading the blind. Just a quick example. So I live at right at King University. There's a building going up beside me for 2,100 a square foot.
Yeah.
And I think you guys know where I'm talking about. Yeah. My unit's going for 1350. So you're talking about 700 a square foot. Like I don't know how it's gonna hit. And I know one of the construction guys there very well. They sold 60% at 2,100. So then I step back and I'm just like, again, it will sell and pre-construction it would sell but sell lower, but it'll be sold to people that don't understand the numbers behind it and listening to a real estate agent that doesn't know really the numbers either.
Yeah, or alternatively, they're end users and this is exactly where they want to be, right? Usually with end users for new development, it's just about the location and the amenities, right? If you really want to be at King University, you're going to pay the price for it. And, that's what the real estate has become, right? Location. You can't change that. So at the end of the day, it's just about where you want to be. But you're right. Yeah. If you look at the resale,
just to throw it out there, you could buy where I am at. And if you want to overpay, pay 1,400 rather than 21.
Yeah.
You can.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, location. I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to say no, Quinn, but you can always overpay and get in the area you want. You don't have to like sell the farm to get there or totally go crazy on it. Like the area, like every area, every area you can buy into. If I go to any property and say, listen, I'm going to buy your property for 200 more square foot, they'll usually say yes. Right, but you're talking about like astronomical, 700 more a square foot plus closing costs. Can you imagine the closing costs on that?
Yeah, and the maintenance fees, I bet it's almost the same or higher than what you're paying now already for square foot as well.
Exactly.
And then,
Exactly.
and then of course there's the parking. What's the parking cost around your area? 125,000
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
parking, right? Like we're talking astronomical prices here for a parking spot, right? Like over 100,000 for a parking spot. You go anywhere else in Canada, and that's almost a house certain places,
So
right?
yeah,
So
so true. So true.
right, so
Well, yeah, I think I think there's going to be some issues with pre-con because I do talk to also developers as well as the people, the numbers behind it, and they're not gouging. They're honestly not gouging. They're making money. Don't get me wrong. They're not gouging. It's going to be interesting because the cost came up so much as far as material and stuff, and they're basing it off that as well as buying the lot. And then the prices are reflecting. They have to make money. I don't know the solution because I got to look into it more. But if they can't sell for less and people can't close on it, it's going to be the government will, you're right, has to step in and probably lower their development costs or something has to give because we do
oh, for
need
sure.
supply.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, we've been kind of looking at it, making the builder out to be the villain, right? But I mean, you're right. Like, I mean, the cost of development has gone up quite a bit, just for contractors, for the equipment, even for concrete. The price of concrete and wood has gone up, right? So at
Yeah,
the end of the day, yeah, like you're right. It's all across the board. So I mean, at the end of the day, the developer, while it makes it seem like they're villains, but the reality is they're business people too, right? So the profit margin isn't as high now either for that
yeah,
$2,100 a square foot as well, right? So
yeah.
yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it's not as if they raised the prices per square foot to sell it to people, and now they went from a 20% profit margin to a 50% profit margin. Their profit margin is probably is the same to slimmer. So they had to sell for more because of the way the costs are going. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting year and a bit, and then even going forward on how they're going to handle it.
Okay,
yeah. I think
so I wanted to do a takeaway on how how potentially you could help some of these poor investors.
Yeah, so
um,
yeah. Yeah, just to throw it out there is like if they have other properties, they're gonna have. I would say to do it sooner than later. And
yeah.
I'm not a real estate agent like you guys. I'm just trying to determine. We're going into a recession, guys. Like that's one thing there's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're raising rates to go into a recession, and prices are going to keep going down. So what the takeaway is that they should be looking at what the shortfall is and to try to take equity out of whatever property they can now before they lose that equity with more decline in real estate prices.
Yeah.
as a last thing I wanted to ask you, Dwayne, was so you mentioned like family and family help, right? Like so parents
Yeah.
help. So if you have 3 weeks to be able to, from the time that they notice that the price and the downfall, the shortcomings, how long does it take to get all the paperwork and to show that it's a gift from a family member, from a parent, to be able to close?
Yeah, you should be able. You can do mortgages quick. You just won't be happy, and it won't be a great process. So you can get it done in 3 weeks. But as I'm saying, a lot of agents should go back, or people who bought pre-con should go to their agent and make an evaluation and see. And so you do have 5-6 months time period.
Be
Does that make
prepared.
sense? Right?
Yeah,
Like end
monthly
of the
budget.
day. Pardon?
Monthly budget. Do
Monthly
your monthly
budget.
budget.
Oh yeah, and there's an also being an accountant as well as a financial planner. Say for example, you have $50,000 in an open account, you can put into your RSP as a couple or whatever, right? You can put that money in now, right? Because then you get it back for tax time. Next thing you know, you got an extra 20 grand working for you for your down payment.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's just about making sure you plan and prepare. If you think about putting money into an RSP any other time of year, you can't do it. You only have a small window, right? It's just different ways to try to get there by budgeting, by financial planning, and knowing where you are.
Yeah. To find that extra, squeeze that extra amount out, right?
100%. As I said, the RSP thing is one thing I do a lot with my clients, where you put money in now, you have to have it there for 90 days. You file your taxes, you get 50% back depending on the tax bracket you're in. But without doing anything different, you'll have higher down payment. Get to the goal.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
Dwayne.
you so much. Yeah. Thanks for
Okay,
coming on. Thanks for giving your knowledge there. And we'll definitely have to get together for lunch.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much, Dwayne, for talking with us. This has been Real Estate Talk with Quinn and Dominika. Have a good one.